I thought I was just another guy punching the clock, until the day she asked for a ride home. What followed wasn't in any plan, and it changed everything. The office I worked in was a pretty standard setup, 8 square rooms, each about 1,080 square feet. 3 of the walls were covered in these dull gray carpeted panels, and the last one was just plain gray paint. My desk curved around 2 of the walls, kind of wrapping me into my own little corner of the world. On the left, there was an overhead cabinet. On the right, a shelf with random files and odds and ends. My inbox was way over on the left edge of the desk, and the outbox sat on the far right like polite strangers avoiding eye contact. Tucked into the corner were 3 computer monitors, all buzzing with light. By 4 o'clock they were starting to give me a pounding headache. Why 3 screens, you ask? That was management's idea. For multitasking, they claimed. Meant to make us more efficient, working on 2 different tasks while researching a third. I even tried playing solitaire on all 3 once after hours. Not as fun as you'd think. Most days I used 2 to track calls and stats, and the third just sat there with my email open. I glanced down at my watch, then up at the wall clock. Time felt frozen. Still 20 minutes left before 5. My desk was clear. Everything had been processed and filed. I figured I'd take one final walk across the phone floor. Sure, I could have checked everything from my desk, but walking around gave me a better feel for the room. About 30 of the 50 workstations were active. Maybe we'd overbooked by a person or 2, but it wasn't a big deal. Most folks looked focused. Even the newbies near my cubicle had their heads down, working. The data reports would tell the rest soon enough. We handled calls for those as seen on TV products. Every time someone dialed the number they saw on the screen, the call bounced to the next available agent. The system pulled up a pre-filled order form for the item, plus a script with suggestions for extras. The agents walked the customers through the process, take the order, pitch the add-ons, say thanks, and end the call. Then they'd get a quick 45-second breather to jot down notes or just reset before the next ring came in. Sooner if we were swamped. If it was slow, calls got routed to whoever had the fewest. Honestly, the whole system ran pretty smoothly. And it must have been making money too, because we paid our agents better than most. Starting rate was $8.50 an hour, bumping to $10 after a month, then $11 at 6 months and $12 once you hit the year mark. Not amazing, but definitely above average for a call center. Add-on commissions helped too, which meant yes, every agent pushed those extras. As the evening crew filtered in, a small group hovered by the doorway waiting for their turn. Each one found their station, fired up their terminal, punched in their ID number, and sat in silence, ready for that first call. The handoff between shifts was always calm and smooth. One by one, the day shift wrapped up their final calls, collected their add-on slips, and handed them over to me as they made their way toward the time clock. And just like that, 1, 2, 3, the cycle began again. That was it, the day had come to a close. Back at my cubicle, I gave the stack of add-on slips one last glance before dropping them neatly into the outbox. Looked like a solid day for knife sales. Judging by the volume, I figured there must have been a couple of those infomercial spots running for the knife sets. Most of the extras sold were those bulky wooden blocks that hold the whole set, the kind that sit on a countertop and make you feel like you know your way around a kitchen. I typed in my supervisor code to officially log out for the day. When I looked back up, it was already 5:10. I stretched out my arms, slowly stood, and made my way toward the elevators. There wasn't any rush. The truth was, going home didn't feel all that inviting. My place was a small 1-bedroom apartment. Way too expensive for what it was, but I paid the price for the gated parking and extra security. The walls were pretty bare except for a few photos I'd taken during my trip to the Florida Keys the previous winter. That vacation had been a rare bright spot. Warm sunshine in the dead of January, ocean breeze cutting through whatever was weighing on me at the time. Just as the elevator dinged, I suddenly remembered I'd left my coat at my desk. I sighed, walked back to grab it, and by the time I returned, the elevator situation wasn't great. One was stuck up on the 22nd floor, 2 were crawling their way back from lower levels, and the 4th, the notoriously slow one, was finally making its descent toward my floor. I wasn't in a rush though. Like I said, home could wait. "Hey Patrick, working late tonight?" a voice called out behind me. I turned and saw her, the new secretary who worked with a handful of the mid-level managers. They all shared her desk, and there were whispers around the office. People said those managers were pretty generous with their refusals to head home right away. And I was willing to bet a few wives would have preferred their husbands skip those after-hours drinks with the office staff. I nodded politely as the elevator doors opened. Just the 2 of us inside. The elevator was about as fast as a turtle through molasses, and I think we both knew the ride wouldn't be quick. As we descended, I glanced over and said, "I'm thinking about grabbing a cold beer at the bar by the office. You're welcome to join, though it's more of a guy's hangout than anything." Sabrina, that was her name, smiled and replied, "Yeah, you're probably right." When we got there, a waitress in a pretty eye-catching outfit came over to take our order. We asked for 2 cold mugs, a pitcher of beer and a big bowl of popcorn. It felt good shedding the heavy winter coats in that dim, noisy room. When she returned with our drinks, the waitress motioned toward a booth that had just been vacated and said, "They're heading out, want to take that spot?" I nodded and slipped her a $2 tip instead of my usual one. A little gesture, but it felt right in that moment. As we settled into the booth, sharing a bowl of buttery popcorn and sipping on our first cold beers, Sabrina leaned back and looked at me with curiosity in her eyes. "So, Patrick, what's the dream that keeps you from chasing after someone like most folks seem to do?" she asked. I paused a moment, caught a little off guard. Before I could answer, she started telling me about her own life. Turns out, her dad had helped cover her college expenses, which made things easier. She'd stayed with him and her stepmom during that time, and she really loved being down there. Key West, warm breezes and ocean sunsets. I found myself surprised she ended up way up here in the cold grip of northern Ohio instead of staying closer to that kind of life. "I've got to ask," I said, curious now, "why stick around up here if your dad's down in Key West? You live with your mom?" She shook her head. "No, Patrick. My mom passed away a few years back. If she were still here, both of them would be living down south for sure." There was a quiet moment between us before she continued. "I came up here for school originally. Figured I could always find work, even if it was just bussing tables or waiting on folks." "Sounds like you've given it a lot of thought," I said. Sabrina gave a small smile. "I have. I mean, I could probably move back now and stay with Dad for a bit, but I don't want to crowd him and my stepmom. They've got their life and I know they value their space." "Your dad's still working?" I asked. "Oh yeah," she replied. "He's an assistant manager at one of the big hotels down there. His hours are a little all over the place, but he and Clara, that's my stepmom, they make time for beach days whenever they can." She looked down at the table and added, "Meanwhile, I'm up here with just the basics, a few clothes and little things. Not much else." Almost without thinking, I said, "So, want to pack up and head to Key West?" She looked at me sharply, her eyes narrowing, not angry, not laughing either. Just studying me like she was trying to figure out if I really meant it. "I'd like that," she said quietly. "I really would. If you're okay being a busboy, I'm sure I could find work too, maybe as a waitress or in a little shop. I doubt Dad would mind if I crashed there for a month or so until I found a roommate. Or 3. I grinned, trying to keep it light. "Well, I'm no Greek god, but I've got a 6-pack, in the fridge at least." That made her laugh. "My kind of guy. At least I run every day, try to keep in shape." I let out a laugh of my own. "I run too, mostly in the gym at my apartment. I've got to balance out the hours I spend staring at those vacation pictures on my wall while I admire the cute waitstaff on TV." Without missing a beat, Sabrina reached across the table and gave me a playful punch on the shoulder. "What's wrong?" Sabrina teased, leaning forward with a grin. "You can't even admire a friendly face?" "I can," I replied, chuckling, "but you've got that showroom shine, like one of those trucks with every recommended service done right on time. Paint polished under about a dozen coats of wax." She raised an eyebrow. I shrugged. "Every time I get turned down for a date, I end up waxing my truck. I don't ask women out all that often, mostly because I'm always busy with wax on, wax off." She laughed again. "So, did you drive that dream truck of yours today?" "Yes, ma'am," I said, proud but casual. "Don't have a car yet, just the truck." "Good," she replied. "That means you can give me a ride home and I'll finally get to see this truck of yours." I waved the waitress over, paid the tab for the last pitcher, and turned to Sabrina. "We'll head out after this. Might as well enjoy the ride." As we walked out, the conversation drifted back to work. "You know," she said, "I used to run a cash register and stock shelves at the big grocery store while I was still in school. Was making close to $10 an hour. Not bad at all," I said. "Florida might not pay that much," she added, "but I'm sure we could find something decent. Maybe retail, maybe food service, we'd make it work." When we pulled up to her apartment, she glanced over. "Want some spaghetti? I've got a ton left, meat sauce and even some lettuce for a quick salad. Come eat with me. We can fill in my roommates on the idea." I nodded and we headed inside. For the first time in a long while, I was seeing her through different eyes, not just as a coworker but as a woman. Sabrina looked like she was in her mid-50s, maybe 5 feet 6 inches, and somewhere around 130, 140 pounds. She wasn't skinny, not heavy either. She had a solid, confident shape. There was something proud in the way she carried herself. She didn't dress to show off, but you could tell she had a figure worth noticing. Her medium brown hair had this natural softness to it, and I imagined it would catch the sun and turn golden down in Florida. Her skin had a slight tan, maybe a hint of Italian background. She once told me she wasn't really available, but part of me wondered if that was more of a defense, maybe just a way to keep things professional. Still, she had that rare kind of warmth. The type that stood out, especially in an office full of people who seemed like they'd forgotten how to smile. I'd worked with plenty of agents who looked miserable all day, and I could practically predict how long they'd last. A person with a frown glued to their face won't make it in phone sales. It's the voice that sells, and a smile in your tone always makes the difference. That morning I'd been up early, shaved, showered, dressed, trying to get a jump on the day. Downtown traffic was going to be a mess, and I wanted to make time to swing by Loubert's Deli to pick up some ham. The owners were devout, never compromising their values even if it meant turning down a sale. I respected that. Later, when Sabrina and I said goodbye for the day, she gave me a look and said, "Think about when you want to hand in your notice, we should turn them in together. If you're still serious about moving to the Keys, count me in." We shared a quiet wave goodbye and I stepped into the call-in center, my head buzzing with thoughts, not just about work but about what might come next. It was clear something was off. The night shift didn't have a full roster, and that had me worried about how thin my day crew might be running. I walked over to the break room, and before I even got through the door, a few folks were already coming by my cubicle's entrance. One of them stopped and said, "Well, I won't have to worry about putting in my notice. They told me today's my last shift. They're letting me go as of tomorrow, Friday." The tone was bitter but quiet. They said it was because I wasn't compatible with their needs. Can you believe that? What a cold, vague way to cut someone loose. Sabrina noticed the shift in my expression and gave me a worried look. I must have been frowning. I tried to ease her concern. "It's disappointing," I said, "that management treats new hires like that. No support, no warning, just gone." Then something clicked. "I'll bet that's where Miss Sheba is this morning." She logged in, but right after that, the system told her to report to personnel. I smiled, trying to keep things light even though the situation didn't feel that way at all. That day, the snowstorm had kept most people stuck indoors, which meant they were watching TV and calling in to buy whatever was flashing on the screen. We were slammed. I had 37 agents logged in, which was way more than the 28 we were scheduled for. Another 8 were waiting to join the afternoon shift. I needed to get them all settled and working. Once I gathered all the folks willing to take on extra hours, I made an announcement. "Okay everyone, I'll extend your wrap-up time to 2 minutes. It won't be long enough for a nap, but at least you'll get a breather, maybe enough to stretch or grab some water." But something deeper had started brewing inside me. That morning's toxic energy, the dismissals, the silence, the way women were talked about behind closed doors, it all added up. And suddenly I'd had enough. Right then and there, I decided to resign. I went to personnel and handed in my notice. I told them straight, I wasn't interested in working in a place that treated people like that. The culture upstairs was toxic, disrespectful, especially toward women. I wasn't going to stand by and be a part of it. By lunchtime, both the VP and the executive head of personnel had come by to talk to me. I told them all the same thing. I'd been saving to move to the Keys and I was looking forward to starting fresh. I slipped my resignation letter into my jacket pocket, handed my security badge over to Stan and smiled. "I'm ready," I said. "Pay me what I'm owed and I'm out." On the way down in the elevator, Stan kept trying to change my mind. He even mentioned a new secretary they'd just hired for the mid-level managers, like that would make me reconsider. We shook hands as I stepped through the revolving door. Stan didn't look back. I did, just long enough to see him press the elevator button and disappear behind the closing doors. Outside, the cold air hit my face as I stood there, looking at the life I was about to leave behind. I spoke to the building manager, told him, "I'll pay for the next 2 months on the apartment, but I won't be staying full-time." He raised an eyebrow. "So, are you planning to live there or just use it for storage?" I smiled. "Probably just storage. My new place is bigger, enough space for me and someone new. A live-in partner." He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "So, what would it take to get you to move out early?" "I've got someone ready to move in." I looked at him for a moment, then said plainly, "Buy me out for 1 month's rent and return my full deposit. You realize I've kept this place spotless, right?" Felt like a bold move. For a second, I half expected someone nearby to overhear and think I'd lost my mind. Everything was happening fast, too fast maybe, but it all felt right. Back at the apartment I started packing. I didn't have much so it didn't take long. One banker's box was enough to clear out the kitchen. My clothes and stuff from the dresser filled another. A third held the few decorations I'd bothered to put up. Then I stood there for a while in the middle of the living room just taking it all in. I called the furniture rental company. I figured I'd arrange for a pickup, but instead they told me I could keep the furniture. Said I'd paid enough overtime that it was basically mine. Took some back and forth to explain I was moving and didn't want to haul any of it with me. Later that afternoon I stopped by the bank to cash my check. Even that was a hassle. They gave me a hard time since it was from a different bank. After a bit of back and forth they finally handed me the cash. By the time everything was sorted, I was headed out to pick up Sabrina. It took us 2 trips to get her things loaded into the truck. She had more hanging clothes than I did, but not by much. I packed them in a way that let me still see out the back window. One side hers, the other mine. We pulled past the city limit sign at 4:15 in the afternoon, heading south toward something new. Traffic wasn't terrible, just the usual flow. We were both excited. We joked about spending too much money on fun stuff once we got to Florida, but neither of us seemed to care. Some things are worth the splurge. We spent a full day at Busch Gardens, riding roller coasters, checking out the animals, laughing like kids. On Monday we used the combo ticket to hit both Busch Gardens and another nearby park. Then came Tuesday and Wednesday, our Disney days. We didn't even see everything, but it didn't matter. We were soaking in every moment. Thursday we explored Universal Studios, spending more money than we probably should have. But it was one of those once-in-a-lifetime weeks. One evening, as the sun slipped behind the waves, we found ourselves walking barefoot along the edge of the beach, just the two of us talking. Sabrina glanced over at me and said, "You know, you're the first guy I've met who's never tried to change me. You've let me be exactly who I am, no pressure, no expectations." I nodded, feeling every word. "That means a lot, Sabrina. I've wanted a friend, a real companion, for a long time. They're not easy to find. You've brought joy into my life and I don't want that to go away." She stopped and looked at me, really looked, and in that quiet, familiar way we both knew. This wasn't just a getaway. It wasn't just a vacation. It was a beginning. We weren't perfect and we didn't try to be. But somehow, through laughter, long drives, and unexpected detours, we found ways to make each other feel whole, again and again. Friday morning came, and as we slowly woke, Sabrina turned to me with that sleepy, warm look in her eyes. "Can we stay here one more night?" she asked softly. "I'm not ready to leave just yet, we're still getting to know each other." I smiled. How could I say no to that? The next day, Saturday, we took a drive down to Marathon Key to visit my aunt and my sister. They were thrilled, genuinely overjoyed, to see us, and even more excited when they heard we planned to settle in Key West. Their place sat right on the water, and I spent hours out on their dock, just watching the water ripple, bubbles rise, fish darting beneath the surface. Peace like that is hard to come by. That night, Sabrina and I felt like the world had paused just for us. We held each other like nothing else mattered. As I leaned over her, our eyes locked, she wrapped her legs around my waist, pulled me close and whispered, This feels so right, Patrick. Let's hold on to this. Let's keep it just like this." By Monday morning, we were both up early and ready to start job hunting. Sabrina's dad suggested we hold off for just a little bit longer. He said he had some friends, club owners, who might be able to help. With the way he saw it, if we were willing to work hard and take on just about anything, we'd be fine. Around 11 a.m., we found ourselves at a local beach bar, sipping on some strong drinks. Sabrina's dad always joked that they should just call them hurricanes and be done with it, because folks ordering them always expected something wild and tropical, no matter the time of year. We talked about everything: wages, commissions, tip splits, and he shared advice straight from the bartending school playbook. It was more helpful than he probably realized. Not long after, Sabrina came running up to me, eyes bright. "I got the job," she grinned. "The head waiter hired me as a waitress." We both needed to pick up some work clothes, so we went shopping for a few pairs of black pants and skirts for her. It felt good to be preparing together, like we were really building something. That Tuesday evening we started our first shifts. New hires usually got the early hours, which were quieter and gave us room to learn the ropes. But we weren't picky, we were even open to working second shift. We needed the money and we were ready to hustle. The early shift kept us steady. We ran the whole section ourselves, no need to share tips with barbacks or busboys. That first night we were already being asked to stay for the second shift. We didn't get home until almost 2 a.m., tired but satisfied. We collapsed onto the couch, arms draped over each other, already making plans for the week ahead. About a month into the job, Sabrina's dad walked into the bar during my shift. I poured him his usual, scotch and water, then leaned across the bar to chat. "So," he said casually, "what are you getting for Sabrina?" I blinked. "Getting her? For what?" He laughed, shaking his head. "What day is it, son?" I glanced at my watch, then checked the date on the register. A sudden wave of realization hit me like a splash of cold water. He just smiled knowingly, waiting for my reaction. "It's February 12th, I said, checking my watch again. "Is that supposed to mean something?" Sabrina's dad just grinned and shook his head, clearly enjoying my confusion. "It's not about the date, son. It's about knowing what she wants, and acting on it before she finds 100 reasons why you should wait. Trust me, just pick one. It'll be exactly right." That stuck with me. I hadn't really noticed when things shifted, when we moved from being two people testing the waters to becoming something far deeper. Friends, lovers, partners. It just happened quietly and completely. But that day was rough. The rest of my shift dragged, and the manager kept nudging me to stay late. One of the regular bartenders had called in sick, and we were short-handed. I finally wrapped things up around 4 a.m., wiped down the last counter, and turned things over to the night crew. When I got home, I found Sabrina curled up and fast asleep on top of a pile of clean laundry. She looked so peaceful, so completely worn out. I gently lifted her into the truck without waking her. At our place, I softly nudged her awake just enough to get her inside and into bed. The next morning, her dad's words still echoed in my mind. He was right, Sabrina wasn't one to make demands. But if I paid attention, she gave quiet clues about what mattered to her. After breakfast, I walked into a local jewelry store, and the man behind the counter, an older Jewish gentleman wearing his yarmulke and a kind smile, guided me through the process. After a little back and forth, I chose a ring that felt perfect. Not too flashy but beautifully simple, something that spoke more to forever than to show. He nodded. "A good choice. She can choose the wedding band to go with it later." We kept looking and found a delicate gold heart pendant. It was plain, just the outline, and we decided on an inscription. Something meaningful, something just for us. I left the store smiling. On the way home, I stopped at Walgreens to grab some cards and a box of chocolates. The aisles were full of red and pink, people scrambling for last-minute Valentine's gifts. But I already had everything I needed. Back home, I started cooking. Enough breakfast for the two of us to fuel up for whatever the day brought. Eggs, toast, a little fruit, and coffee. I wanted the morning to feel special, even if nothing extravagant happened. When Valentine's Day finally arrived, Sabrina's mom called. She'd heard about the chocolates and the card. "That's really sweet," she said. "And kind of unusual, honestly. Most guys don't put that kind of thought into things anymore." Maybe that was true. But I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I just wanted to show her, quietly, sincerely, that I was in it. That I saw her. That I knew what we were building wasn't just a fling or a season. It was the real thing. She really loved the necklace. When I clasped it around her neck, she beamed and gave me the kind of hug that said more than words ever could. It was a small gesture, but it meant something, to both of us. We were still at the house with her parents when I gave her the necklace. I made a big show of it, teasing her a little. "Turn around, close your eyes," I said. When she did, I gently fastened the gold chain. Hanging from it was a small flat heart, simple, shiny, and personal. When she opened her eyes and saw what I'd given her, she touched it gently and smiled, glowing. That night, the lounge was bustling. By 5 p.m., every table was full and the restaurant was nearly booked solid. The evening rush kept us moving, but around 11 o'clock, an hour after the kitchen shut down, the energy began to settle. The owner started letting some of the early shift go, thanking each of us as we clocked out. When Sabrina and I passed by the office to turn in our tip sheets, he handed us both a crisp $20 bonus. "Thanks for the hard work," he said, his smile genuine. "Stick around for a drink or two on the house. You've earned it." We stayed. The place had quieted down, and we found ourselves enjoying a few slow moments with each other. I looked around. Most of the customers had left, only a few remained tucked into booths along the wall. Then, on impulse, I reached for Sabrina's hand and guided her toward the bar. With a playful grin, I lifted her up onto it and pulled up a chair so she could sit above everyone, perched like a queen. Then I climbed up myself, standing right in front of her. She looked around, a bit unsure at first, not because she didn't trust me but because, well, we were literally standing on the bar. Then she caught sight of the owner by the office door, watching us with a grin that gave us the green light. Right then, something shifted, and so did the room. Sabrina's eyes caught her parents standing near the entrance, smiling wide. My voice was steady, my heart was not. To family, to new beginnings, I said, raising a glass. And to love, may it last longer than the best shift and feel better than the biggest tip. There was a moment, applause, cheers, laughter, and then congratulations came pouring in. Coworkers, friends, even strangers clapped us on the back, shook our hands and hugged Sabrina. We were glowing, overwhelmed, speechless even. There were so many questions about what was next, where we'd go, how we'd build it all. And yet, in that moment, none of that mattered. Later that night, we returned home to our still, quiet house by the beach. We were barefoot in shorts and t-shirts, standing together in the gentle tide. The Atlantic rolled in softly, washing over our toes. We stood there, hand in hand, staring out into the dark water. Two people who took a chance, who risked change and somehow found home in each other.